Everybody, Invisible Katana here, doing a yay or nay for, of course, the new Star Wars game, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, or whatever the heck it's called. Honestly, I'm so messed up by the EA Play thing. I can't even think of the actual title. It was a minute ago when I watched it, and I've been dealing with a bunch of stupid new phone stuff. Had to get a whole new app just to be able to even use my phone. Um, the game I thought was cool. Normally, I would do a thing where it's like, I would pick this one game, maybe whatever else caught my interest, and be like, yay or nay on these couple of things here and there. EA had nothing. I would also normally do a video per conference, even though they're calling it like EA Play this year, the EA Play event instead of a specific EA press conference, and that was fine. I would normally still be like, all right, I like this, I like that. Here are my top five things. There was one thing, and it was Star Wars. I don't care about Battlefield. I didn't care about. I've never played Apex. I've never played Battlefield 5 at least. I played. Actually, I think the last Battlefield I played was no, I don't even remember the last one. I was thinking Medal of Honor, which was the last Medal of Honor for PS3. So I don't remember the last time I played Battlefield. Don't care about it. Don't care about any sports games. Didn't care about Apex Legends. I thought they were announcing a new Sims, and then I happened to watch a video later. I skipped over all the sports stuff, by the way. I watched Star Wars. I listened to them go through Apex Legends. I didn't really pay that much attention, and then by the time they got to Battlefield, I was like, okay. I wasn't even looking when they were talking like this new map is coming out. I wasn't even bothering with it, and then I was like, you know what? It's sports and Sims, and I just skipped. I just skipped it all. I skipped to the end, and then they mentioned something about Magic. Something about Magic is going to be in the Sims, and so it's not a new Sims game. It's Sims 4. They're just supporting it, which is basically the whole conference. We're supporting all these things that are already out, except for Star Wars. It's coming out. So Star Wars, year and a. What is it? I feel like Jedi is in there, but it's probably just Star Wars Fallen Order. Whatever that it is, it doesn't really matter. It's Star Wars, and it looks good. I will say that right now, it's a yay for me. I'm always kind of hyped up. It's Star Wars. I love Star Wars, but it does look good. I could flat out say, like, if I thought it looked like crap, I'd say no. I'd be sad to say it because I freaking love Star Wars. But right now, I'm at least hopeful. I'm still, it's still a yay for me because at first when I saw it, I was like, okay, it certainly looks cool. It was interesting where it seemed to be headed just based on the trailer. I was like, all right, I think I'll at least enjoy the story, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for, is that the story will be fun, but the gameplay looks entertaining. So I feel like it's me loving the story. I feel like that's an element from Force Unleashed was the last really big Star Wars game as far as single player story driven stuff, because the story for Battlefront 2 was nothing. And that was more of a story than the first game, which literally had nothing. But even Battlefront 2 story, people were just like, eh. So it's the first big Star Wars game we've had in a minute, story driven, and it's like, all right, let's see what they do with this. And it seems like it'll be entertaining. The action seemed like it was entertaining as well. We got to see some pretty cool Force abilities, double jump, and I was like, all right, it makes sense. In this game, it's one of the few things where it makes sense to have a double jump because technically it's a Force jump. So I was like, all right, he has the Force jump. Little mini mechanics that were kind of cool, like when there were like vines that you could swing on, he would use the Force to like bring the vines to him, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's a cute little mechanic. Little kind of mundane everyday stuff that you would use with the Force, like, oh, I want that cup, boom, it's over here. The stuff that everyone's tried to do their whole life, trying to get use the Force and get telekinesis. But I was like, all right, that's kind of cool, little stuff like that. See some wall running, we see some climbing. Everyone said it looks like Uncharted, and it really looked like Uncharted during that climbing segment. It's like, no joke, the mechanics that they did, how he stopped and the way he would like lean over before he jumped. I was like, that's having played every Uncharted game. That's exactly what it looks like. Like you stop at the edge and then they like lean over and then they jump over to it. And I was like, that looked exactly like Uncharted. The camera was set just like Uncharted, and it was 100% when he was climbing up. I think it was like right before his little droid. I think it's called like DD, before it like turned on the giant cutting machine and it went through the wall. It was that specific scene. I was like, just the camera setup, the graphics for it kind of make it look like Uncharted a little bit. It kind of looks like Uncharted 4. It has that high fidelity, sort of smooth look to it. And I was like, yeah, that makes it look like Uncharted 4. So it kind of looks like the game. It probably didn't help that when they did the actual stream, it wasn't like in the highest quality, but I watched it later, and if you watch like just the gameplay by itself, they have it in 4K, so it definitely looks a lot better. But yeah, I was like, yeah, this definitely looks like Uncharted in pretty much every way, especially in that specific scene. It was just like the graphics are already fairly close, like Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy, and then that specific scene, I was like, the camera's in the exact same position. It's it's a wide shot as he starts climbing. The mechanic of how he leans over before he jumps, I was like, that's full on Uncharted. So that was interesting to see, because I was like, that was when it really hit, where I was like, this looks like Uncharted. I don't mind that at all. You know, same thing when it came to the Tomb Raider reboot, where it was like, you know, it was Tomb Raider, then Uncharted came out after Tomb Raider stopped coming out, and then the reboots came out, and it was like, well, it's like the Uncharted games, you know, it was like then it was like, that's fine if it works, that's totally fine, and I'm totally fine with that. It's even more different considering it's Star Wars compared to Tomb Raider, which really is like the same thing as Uncharted, but I enjoyed it. I was like, all right, that's cool. We get to see some other really cool powers. They do the Kylo Ren thing from The Force Awakens, where you can like, I forgot what the heck they called it, but they mentioned like it's between force push and pull. So it's like the slow mo move where you can like hit somebody and they're, you know, they're stuck in slow motion. Blaster bolts can be hit in slow motion. They use it for a fan. They use it for whatever the giant turbine thing was, and he uses it as a bridge, and he like hits it and it slows down. And I was like, that's awesome. That I thought was super cool. Favorite part of the whole thing, of course, when he throws the dude and the blaster is going in slow motion, and then he like force pulls the guy, and then he moves him over in front of the blast. And I was like, oh, that's super cool. So that was my favorite scene in the whole trailer, because I was like, that's pretty awesome. And I thought about that as they were doing it, because if I'm not mistaken, that was before he did or it may have been after the flamethrower characters. I can't remember when he fought them, but I thought like, oh, that could be an actual mechanic in the game where you're fighting people, whereas like they use the flamethrower, you can free somebody as they're shooting you and you dodge to the side, and then you can just force pull someone else through their flames because they're just stuck in this motion, and you just force pull someone through the fire. Little mechanics like that was like the first thing I thought of. I was like, okay, if you have consistent motion, you can pull someone through. And you know what they show with the guy, where he shoots his own blaster, and then, you know, the character pulls him in and then puts him in front of his own hit or his own attack. He kills him. So I was like, okay, that totally works. They show it in the little clip section at the end of the demo, where the guy has basically, you know, a Gatling gun, and he shoots a bunch of blasts at him, and he freezes all of them, and then he just walks up to one and just reflects one blast in midair. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool too. Like, you can freeze a bunch of blasts. I assume it's character specific. I don't know if that's going to be the thing with one of the upgrades, where it's excuse me, you can kind of do like a wide blast. That was kind of getting into my Force Unleashed mode. Like, okay, if you upgrade up to this point, is it going to be like, okay, well, you were able to freeze like this one person, but now you've upgraded it to like the max level, and it's just a field in front of you. Like, whatever's in front of you, boom, it's in slow motion now. So you can hit like 4 or 5 people as long as they're within like this specific, you know, area of effect, which I think they should do, because that just makes sense. It can be specific to like number of people, but it would be really cool if it was area of effect. And technically, it's like if you can get anything within 5 feet, it's in slow motion, which I think would be the cooler way to do it, just because it's like, it's not technically overpowered because you still have to get the characters within that range. So I think I would prefer it to be that way, instead of it being like, okay, now you've upgraded from 1 person to 2 people or 2 monsters or whatever. It's just an area of effect. Like, it's this direction, like, you know, this direction, this much space, boom, and that's how it goes. So I think that's how I would prefer to see it, but, you know, we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. But the slow motion move, very cool. He had the lightsaber throw, thought that was cool. They show some mechanics, and this is kind of the main thing, because it was like, all right, the gameplay itself looked cool. We get to see some cool mechanics: slow motion, force push, force pull, where he does like the instant kill moves and stuff. We see the mechanic of the trooper with the thing that can defend himself. I can't remember the names of the troopers. I'm kind of bad when it comes to that specific part of Star Wars. But, you know, they can defend themselves, and they're, of course, much smarter enemies because they're like mini bosses. So he does the force pull, and he's slowing himself down, and then it's like, okay. And then it lets go, and then he like flies at him because he's like pulling him forward. And I was like, oh, well, that's a great mechanic. But they showed some really interesting stuff during that specific scene, where he does a counter at the very end, and it seems like it goes into slow motion, and the character, like whoever was playing, they do like a physical attack, like he kicks him and then he like swings the lightsaber up. And I was like, that looked like kind of a three system attack, where it's like, okay, I can do the physical move in with the lightsaber, straight lightsaber attack, or I can do like a force attack and just like blast him, and that'll be, you know, be like the final hit. And I was like, all right, because like I said, it went into slow motion, so it seemed like you get the options like within that time frame. It's like, all right, do you want to do force attack, lightsaber attack, classic melee, or, you know, melee hand to hand plus lightsaber? So I thought that was cool, and I could be wrong, but I was like, otherwise it went into slow motion for nothing, because there was nothing there. Otherwise, it would have just been normal speed, and he would have just gone through the motion. But I was like, it went in slow motion for a quick second. They don't show any of the icons. It's alpha game footage. Plus, even if it wasn't alpha, that's kind of a classic thing. They don't show you all those mechanics, but you get like little teases, because it's like, oh, it's that, why'd it go into slow motion? I'm guessing that's what it was for. Could easily be wrong, but that was my assumption there. So I was like, all right, that seems pretty cool if they have that mechanic. And it seems like they certainly have I was watching another video. Someone mentioned it kind of had kind of like a Sekiro Shadows Die Twice type thing / Neo, and I was like, I can definitely see that because it has actual counters, and I was like, well, that's kind of cool. You don't see that in a Star Wars game. You block blaster bolts back and forth, no big deal. Which is also a thing I thought was interesting. It was like if you time it right, you can reflect it back at the person, and I think that's kind of normal. I think it's always kind of been that way. You have to do it like as they blast, and then you reflect it, and it goes back. But if you're just blocking, he'll just kind of send the bolts flying everywhere. But I was like, all right, that's kind of a normal mechanic that we've had before. The lightsaber throw we've seen before, but throw it in there because that's just a cool, cool move to have. Slow motion, definitely interesting. And then the actual like up close and personal lightsaber combat, different levels for different characters. You have, the ending blow for the special trooper that was fighting with the staff. You have the force pull instant kill move for the classic stormtrooper. You have it seemed like it was an instant kill counter when he was fighting the bug, because I was like, okay, he's slashing this bug up and stuff. And there was a point where he's dodging stuff, and then I think it was one attacked him. I think it was the one that looked like it bit his head off, or it may have been the one like right after that. But he does like an instant counter, and it just chops the legs clean off. And I was like, that was one move, and he countered it. So I don't know if that's going to be like a special meter move, where it's like you get an instant kill no matter what the enemy is. If you counter at least, or it's just automatically like you just hit the button, and if it's in a counter, then you get a different animation. If it's just an attack, it'll be a different animation as well. But I was like, I hope it's just counter based. So if you do like a perfect counter, you'll get an instant kill, depending on the enemy at least and how they attack, because he just chopped the legs off. Simple. It was just done. I also assumed the game was on easy mode, because that's what they always do for demos, and because he was like slicing through people, you'd hit him with one hit and they died, which makes sense for a lightsaber, but it's also a video game, so they aren't going to make it that easy, because obviously he hit the mini boss character, so even on easy mode, they don't go down in one hit. And I was like, all right, makes sense, but I am curious what that'll be like in actual gameplay, because if you have those instant kill moves, does it only work on classic stormtroopers? In which case, because there was a force meter, so in that case, you got like 3 stormtroopers, force pull, kill, force pull, kill, force pull, kill, or does that not work 100% of the time? Like, can the classic stormtroopers also learn the counter? Can they fight back against that? There are a lot of questions as to how the mechanics work exactly during, those combat segments. So I was like, all right, let's see how that plays out when it gets to normal combat. Do you have to fight them more than once? Can you, how often do the instant kills come up? Like I said, if it's the force pull, is that automatically a kill if you actually get them caught in the pull? Because technically it should be, because he's impaling them and like kind of cutting through them, which I thought was cool. But it was like, I hate that it was it was a super weird middle ground where I was like, oh, it was kind of like TV, movie Star Wars, where he's like slicing through people. He literally slices one dude in half. And I was like, you see the lightsaber cut, but the dude doesn't get split in half. And I was like, I feel like they can do that in a T14 game, but maybe not anymore because the graphics are so good. Because they had that in like Jedi Academy 2 on the original Xbox. And I remember that because it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen, because it was the first time that ever happened. And they did it in the Force Unleashed games as well. At least the second one. I can't remember if that was actually a part of the first one. I think it was, but they had it in Jedi Academy 2, like I said, on the original Xbox. They may have had it in the first one. I've never had that one. But, playing with the lightsaber, that like blew my mind, because I would go through and, fight against stormtroopers, and I would do a slash, and I'm like, oh, it's, video game. I'm going to do a cut here, a cut there, and then eventually their health will go down. And I would do one cut, and I would like slice the dude's arm off, and I was like, holy crap, that's like actually realistic to Star Wars. Like, you would chop someone's arm off. You don't cut people in half in that game either, but you do cut off limbs. And I was like, well, they could easily have that in here, and they might have it. They probably either didn't want to show it, or it's just not there because it is still technically alpha. But I don't know. I thought that was interesting, because they put a lot of work into like, oh, you cut him here, and like the whole suit would be like slashed up and like, charred and glowing red. And I was like, I feel like with that mechanic being so worked on, where like all these different slashes and it followed the trail, like when he impaled like the first person, he impales them and then basically pulls the lightsaber out, and you see where the lightsaber went. Like, you see like the whole line of the lightsaber through the stormtrooper armor. And I was like, I feel like they have to have some limb, degradation in this game. And of course they show it on the monster as well, where he does the counter, and it's like an instant kill, he chops the legs off. So I was like, well, they have it for the legs of, a random alien creature, so it kind of has to be in there. Like I said, just the way they do it, where you see every little stroke on the armor where the lightsaber hit, I was like, I think the limbs might come off, and that might not be something they have yet, because like I said, it's it even says it's alpha game footage. So with the 5 months I think they have, because it's September or October or something like that. I might even be November. I can't remember how many months they have. I think I saw it somewhere. Somebody said 5 months, but with the time that they have, that might be one of the extra things they just add in, where it's like, all right, finish the game, finish this, finish that, and then it's like, all right, let's just work on limbs popping off and stuff like that, which probably still wouldn't come down until like the last hit, or maybe last two hits. If you do like a certain move, you chop an arm off and it takes like half the meter down, that sort of thing. So we'll see what happens with that. But I was like, with the way they did all the like keystrokes of the lightsaber through the armor and everything, I was like, it just seems like so pointless to have it that focused on and that much attention to it, and then they don't get sliced in half. But at the same time, they probably won't do that, because it would be considered like too mature, like at that point where you're literally slicing somebody in half. And I assume this game's going to be team, just because it's Star Wars. They always come out as team games. I don't think there's ever, not that I can think of, I don't think there's ever been a mature Star Wars game. Maybe 1313, if that came out, I feel like that probably could have been mature. I feel like just language wise and considering it was bounty hunters, that probably would have come out as a mature game. But I kind of doubt it. It like Star Wars, even pre-Disney, it was like Star Wars was always like right in that middle ground where it was like, you get right up to here, but it's not mature yet. So we'll see how that plays out as far as the dismemberment of characters and things like that. But I like the mechanics. Lightsaber throwing is always cool. Force push is cool. Force pull is cool. And I like the fact that, of course, going off of Force Unleashed, you have some of these mechanics just in a less insane fashion, even though I love the crap out of those games, gameplay-wise. The first one, I like the story. The second one is exactly why there's not a third one, because the story was horrible. But gameplay-wise, I was like, all right, it's like that, but definitely toned down the lightsaber stuff. Slightly new ability as far as they probably won't do, mind control. So instead of that, we get slow motion, which is used for both combat and just mechanic-wise. So I was like, all right, that's cool. The little droid, DD, I thought was pretty awesome. It was like tiny little dude. So I was like, that's cool. And he's like on your back the whole time. So visually, that was pretty nice. One thing I hated, and I hope they change it when the game comes out, it was such a minor thing, but him constantly like clicking the lightsaber, I don't know why it caught my attention, but it was almost like I could see his fingers click it. And plus he was always like putting his hand up. It was like, this is the lightsaber, and every time it was done, like his hand would be down, like anyone would be, like you slash down, you're just walking, and then he would be like boom and click it and put it down. I was like, that just seems so weird. Like every single time it was the same animation, and I was like, why can't it just go off like any Star Wars game or any Star Wars movie even? Because there's some weird rules about lightsabers and how they cut off when they're out of somebody's hand and stuff. And it was like, well, why does it have to be like this weird animation? It just seemed like he raised his hand like just enough for me to be like, he's raising his hand to cut it off and then put it like on the little hook. And I was like, for some reason that just caught my attention, because he did it every single time there was like a lull in combat. The lightsaber would be, I would like any game where you have the gun and then eventually the character holsters it. It was the same thing, except it just didn't look right. Like if someone had the gun, they just go boom. You have to put your arm up to put it down in a holster, or if you have it this way, you just go like boom. But every time he did it, it was like, why wouldn't it just be like, it's already down, you just hit the button, boom, and it's just right on the hook. But it was always like he put his hand up and would do this and then do that and put it down. And it wasn't that dramatic about it, but it was just something that I noticed. Like I said, it was noticeable enough to be like, that's weird that it looks so specific, where it's like it should seem seamless. But every time he did it, I was like, it just oddly drew attention, because it was like it was one animation. It was just like boom, boom. And it was much faster than that, but still it was slow enough for me to notice. And plus his hand went up instead of just being like off and hooked. So that was something, like I said, super tiny that I noticed, but it definitely caught my attention. But all in all, still excited for the game. Forrest Whitaker was in it. That blew my mind. I was very surprised. I was like, I knew it was, before Rogue One and stuff like that. Well, technically we didn't know, but they do say it's before episode 4, but before Rogue One, it kind of makes sense, considering that leads right up to episode 4, the original Star Wars. So it makes sense, but I wasn't expecting him to be in it, so we'll see what happens. I would love to say it would be cool, like, man, Ahsoka's in this. I don't think that's going to happen, because I don't think they're going to put another Jedi in the game. I could be wrong about that, but they do mention before they start the gameplay, it's like he's no longer a Padawan. So somebody teaches him. Somebody knows something about the Force in some way, shape, or form. But we'll just have to see. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. I like that they use, it was like he uses the lightsaber for light. I was like, oh, that's a cool mechanic. I've never actually seen that. I probably haven't, just forgot. But I was like, that's actually kind of cool. It was a super minor thing, but it was like, okay, he's holding the lightsaber up. And I was like, that's fine. That's cool. Would love to see more combat. I would love to see it look a little bit faster. And that was another thing. I was like, just something about it, kind of like with him doing the lightsaber thing, it didn't feel seamless enough. But it was nothing that made me go like, I don't think I want the game. I still want it for now because it's Star Wars. It's got a lightsaber in it. Not that it has to, but I feel like it's going to be entertaining. And I'm very excited story-wise. I feel like if it's at least on the level of the first Force Unleashed game, I can be like, all right, I enjoyed playing it just enough, and the story elevated it to be like, all right, that was worth buying. Force Unleashed 2 is one of those situations where even though I love the crap out of the gameplay, I should say, because it is so much more fun than the first one, because you get double lightsabers, you get like the crazy force mode, and you're just like blasting lightning, and you hit like 20 people at once. It's insane, and it's super fun to play. But story-wise, that game is horrible. Like, it's really, really bad, and that's exactly why they didn't get a third one, because they spent it was a 4-hour game as well, like, or 6 hours, and it was like, this might be the answer. This is the question. And then by the end of the game, it's like, this might be the answer. This is still the question. And then this thing happened, but sort of and not really. And then there's a cliffhanger, and then there's nothing. And it's depressing. And now it's not canon anyway, so it's super depressing. But I'm hoping that it gets even better. We see some more gameplay. I believe they mentioned there's supposed to be more at the Microsoft booth, so maybe we'll get another level. Maybe it'll be even more action-packed. Maybe it'll just be the second half of the demo. We see like a full-on boss fight. Although I assume that was more of a mini boss battle, so I'm curious how they would handle an official boss fight, because it's been a minute since like Force Unleashed 2, and those were so as far as boss fights. They would generally end in QTEs and stuff like that. So we'll see how that pans out. But I enjoyed it. I like the mechanics of it. You had stormtroopers fighting the alien bugs, so I was like, all right, you can have different factions fighting each other. You can kind of just watch that play out. Like I said, the staggering move where, someone's probably shooting a flamethrower, you just freeze them, use them as a shield, and then you throw the lightsaber across, or have an enemy walk through the fire if you pull them, or if it's a bug, they might not be smart enough to be like, I shouldn't run through this fire. Different enemies have different intellects. Little stuff like that can really add to gameplay mechanics. I'm sure there are a bunch of other moves that we haven't seen yet. I don't know if they'll bring anything else over from Force Unleashed. I would love to see Force Lightning, but he's a Jedi, so sadly, that is not the case. That's one of the reasons I love Force Unleashed, because you get like both sides of the powers, and Force Lightning was always my favorite. But we'll see what happens. It's still a yay for me. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about not just the gameplay, but the EA conference in general. Like I said, I'm not going to do a video because I thought it sucked. There was one thing that I liked, so there is no top 5 or even top 2 for their EA Play conference or whatever. So we'd love to know what you guys thought about the conference as a whole, but definitely want to know if you guys are more interested, less interested even after what you got to see, or if you're at the same, you were never interested, or if you're at the same but you're still interested, you're just waiting to see more. So please put your comments down in the comment section below, and of course, thanks for watching.